is your definition of colorism?
So to me, colorism exists in a few different aspects. So I think naturally we think of colorism as the favoritism of lighter skin, lighter complexions over darker complexions, but we also have to take into account the discrimination and the privileges that exist for both sides of that definition. So privileges that lighter complexions get, privileges or oppressions that darker complexions face as well.
Would you say that colorism affects our mental state?
Definitely. So I think this traces back even to childhood. So if we think about it as children, some of the messages that we're getting about our skin color, we're internalizing. So we live in a society where lighter complexions are favored. Lighter complexions usually equate to more privileges. So if you can imagine a child growing up with a darker skin complexion and maybe having siblings who are lighter, they may see those siblings getting more privileges, more compliments, more attention. So for the darker child, they learn to internalize that as, well, why is my skin not pretty? What's wrong with my skin? Why am I not getting the same compliments, the same privileges? Also for the lighter complexions, they realize that they are getting more attention, more favor. So that can lead to low self-esteem in darker complexions, as well as maybe higher self-esteem in lighter complexions. It can also lead to things like depression, anxiety, and then we know from research that low self-esteem can also lead to a wealth of other problems, such as behavioral problems, promiscuity, truancy, criminality, things of that nature. So it definitely has impacts, whether it's mental health impacts or behavioral health as well.
So with that being said, there are different social interactions that happen over the course of, our lifetime, such as dating, marriage, and again, forming relationships in professional realms. How does colorism contribute to those social aspects and concepts?
So tracing it back, we can look at studies. So there have been studies done in the early 1900s. There was something called a brown paper bag test. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it was the concept that if you were darker than a brown paper bag, then you were not granted privileges or you were seen as unattractive. So fraternities and sororities would use the brown paper bag in order to figure out who was accepted into the sorority and fraternity. So if you were the same color as the brown paper bag, that was fine. If you were lighter than the brown paper bag, even better. But if you were darker, you were unattractive, you weren't seen as worthy. Similar research studies have also been used with dolls. So actually 2 Black psychologists in the 1940s, I believe, they did an experiment with a white doll and a black doll. So they gave these dolls to Black children and then asked them, well, which doll is the bad doll? Most of the Black kids would say that the black doll is a bad one. They say, well, which doll is smarter? Most of the kids would point to the white doll. Which doll is ugly? Most of the kids would point to the black doll again. So even in that study, you can see that children are getting these messages that whiter complexions or lighter complexions equate to attractiveness, education, likability, and more positive attributes than the darker doll. Darker dolls usually were associated with negative attributes. So unattractive, less educated, bad, all these negative things you can think of. So as children begin to learn these messages, they take them with them as they date, as they form their own identities. So right now we have a very European ideal of beauty. So fairer skin, lighter skin is seen as more attractive still. We hear it in music, we hear it in social media, we see it in so many different platforms. Lighter skin, straight hair. So we use things such as hair relaxers or skin lightening, bleaching our skin, trying to make ourselves appear lighter, using extensions to try to appeal to the European standard of beauty. We also have internalized self-hate in a sense. So we've been taught darker skin is not as attractive. So In music, you'll hear, oh, I want a foreign chick or a red bone or a yellow bone, things of that nature. So those are kind of seen as the ideal, or what is associated as success or wealthy, or this is the prize to have. We don't hear a lot of good associations when it comes to dark-skinned women. So even with that, you'll see that lighter-skinned women are more likely to be married. I think 55% of light-skinned women, and then we compare that to 23% of dark-skinned women are married. Lighter-skinned women also are more likely to marry men who are of higher socioeconomic status than dark-skinned women as well. So we also think of that in terms of education. So the higher up on the ladder you are education-wise, the less likely you are to get married. When you factor in being a dark-skinned woman as well, that also limits and lowers your chances of getting married. So there are more privileges associated with being lighter and being married than being darker.
So would you say that with those statistics, there are certain tools or survival tactics that we've had to use, especially darker women, of color who are darker, that they've had to adapt to and develop to maneuver through life?
Yeah. So I think talking about colorism is a really good start. So we're recognizing that this exists, and now it's interesting because we've seen a shift in things as a society where now darker skin is valued, darker skin is becoming more appreciated. We have more makeup shades for darker skin. We have more opportunities for dark women. So I think that colorism has been recognized, it's been talked about, and now we're making improvements to kind of eliminate as much colorism as we can to raise the platforms for women of darker complexions.